Not only did the Denver Nuggets take a 2-1 lead last night, but they made some history along the way. We'll get into that in just a little bit as we're here to break down Game 3 of the NBA Finals and give our overall outlook on the series going forward. As well, we're going to dive into another BR article, but this time it's the opposite of Tuesdays. It's going to be your team's worst nightmare here in the offseason. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Bakari Steve. How you doing? How you feeling?
I feel great. I feel good. I'm ready to get to it.
This is your early reminder to support us, as we're now only 40 subscribers away from that 300 mark. We're inching closer, quite literally. So help us get there. If you enjoy the channel at all, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and maybe just share it with a friend. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast, and let's get into CP3. Chris Paul, as most of you know, was waived yesterday from the Phoenix Suns, and the Phoenix Suns waived him yesterday because they had to meet the June 28th deadline. And if they cut him before that deadline, they could use the waive and stretch provision, which means that they're only going to owe him about $15 of the $30 million he was owed this season. There's rumors that Chris Paul still wants to return to the Suns on a cheaper deal because of his relationship with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. But if it's not the Suns, is basically my question to you, is if he doesn't return to the Suns this year, his overall goal is to play several more years with a contender. Which team would you like to see him go? We know both LA teams with the Lakers need a point guard, and his relationship with LeBron, the Clippers, he was there before. Doc Rivers is now gone, so maybe that is an interesting spot for him in Miami or another team.
Yeah, I think both of those LA teams that you mentioned, obviously they would love to have his talents. Obviously, going to the Lakers with LeBron, playing with him, that probably accomplish one of his last career goals at this point for him being like 37, 38, however old he is. But I think an interesting team that he should look into is the Boston Celtics. Give them a true point guard, get them into their sets, especially if they're planning on keeping Jaylen Brown. They can get somebody that's going to get them into their sets. You don't have to sign them to that big of a contract. You're a contender. You'll have the right pieces around them. I think, obviously, like the Heat have a little bit of reconstructing to do. It's crazy as it sounds, even though they're in the finals. But I think, Chris Paul, he could help out that Heat team. I could see it. But like you said, both Lakers teams, even if he wanted to go, maybe if he wanted to take a tier, below contenders, if he wanted to go to like a Minnesota team or, a team like that, Minnesota, I think would be good to have him, especially, for Ant. It was crazy. I saw something that said he should go play with Wemby in San Antonio.
That would be something.
But Chris Paul, he has options out there. But I think an interesting team he should look into is the Boston Celtics.
On a scale of like 1 to 100, I'm gonna give this team a 2% chance. But what about a reunion in New Orleans? He goes to New Orleans. Team goes there with C.J. McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, whatever center. Jonas Valanciunas. Now nobody's going to stay healthy on that team, right?
Yeah,
Bi's out for 2 months with a toe contusion. Zion doesn't play basketball. He's here just to collect a check. And Chris Paul only plays the first 80 games of the year, and then he's nowhere to be found. But I think that would be a good fit to kind of like a full circle moment where he started there. Now he can finish his career there. And last year, they were a 1 seed at one point before everything went downhill. But Damian Lillard, on a recent podcast, he hinted that he wouldn't mind playing for a new team. And he listed the Miami Heat and Brooklyn Nets as teams he would like to play with, or play on, rather. On a scale of 1 to 10, I guess I'm going to ask you, how likely do you think Dame is traded, as it seems like the rumors are continuing to heat up?
I say 70-30 he's traded, especially if I think it's going to be a draft day trade that happens, as the Portland pick comes through. And I say that because if the Hornets do take Brandon Miller at number 2, which there are the reports saying that they're all but taking him at this point. If the Hornets do take Brandon Miller at number 2, Scoot falls to Portland. That's your next star point guard right there. There's no real reason to keep Damian Lillard around unless they trade the pick. But I think at this point they realize that trading Dame is going to be more valuable than trading a pick because Damian Lillard is 32, 33, however old he is. You can get good assets back for him because he still is a superstar in this league, and you can help with that rebuild. There are teams out there that have the assets to go get him. But I do say it's 70-30 he gets traded versus doesn't at this point.
Yeah, I just want to throw it back out there. I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, but I'm just going to guess you had 7.
Oh, yeah.
7
I'll say basically, yeah. It's
okay.
7.
Yeah, I just being difficult for no reason. But Damian Lillard, I mean, let's not mistake the player that he is, the talent that he is. He is probably the third best point guard in the league if you count Luka as a point guard behind Steph and Luka, at least in my opinion, right? I think he's the clear-cut number 3. He's still arguably a superstar in this league, and he could really take a team from just being an okay team to a playoff team, or he could take a playoff team to a title favorite, right? Damian Lillard, he's still an amazing talent, and we'll talk about both of those sides as far as the Charlotte Hornets and the Portland Trailblazers a little bit later on. But moving over to Game 3. But last night, this game took place, as most of you know. It was a good game for the first half, and it was back and forth the whole way. But I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but they went from the high altitude to the lowest altitude, and both teams just really looked tired, even though they've had a couple days to rest there and adapt to being back in Miami or going to Miami for Denver. But both teams just looked tired the entire game. That could have just been me, but just my overall takeaway from the game. But for Denver, like I said, a close game in the first half, but they really took over in that third quarter, and they never really looked back. They made history, as I mentioned in the intro. They had the first ever duo to both put up triple-doubles in the same NBA Finals game in NBA history. Jamal Murray had 34 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. Jokic had a very casual 32, 21, and 10. Christian Braun, he's not a part of that duo, but he also gave them a nice 15-4 off the bench, where he hasn't really scored much this postseason, and then he exploded for 15. But for Miami, to me, it really felt like it was 2-on-5 the majority of the game. Jimmy and Bam, they showed up. They both had 22+. And aside from that, when you look down like their box score as far as point totals, Caleb Martin had 10, which is respectable for Caleb Martin, especially how he started the series. But then it was like 9-9-7, then it was like 6-2. So they didn't get very much production, at least in the scoring department, from their bench in Game 3. Doesn't help Gabe Vincent, one of their guys that gives them 15 to 20 on a regular night. He was in foul trouble the majority of the game. Usually, role players play better at home, and nobody showed up for Miami. Overall thoughts on Game 3 and just outlook on this series going forward?
Yeah, so as of right now, my 5-game prediction for the Nuggets still looks intact, which I'm happy about. But I mean, obviously we know that the Nuggets, if the role players have one bad game, they're going to bounce back the next game. Jamal Murray, obviously, with the 34-point triple-double, bounce back in a major way. Jokic making history with that triple-double. But, yeah, on the Heat side, it kind of feels like the Heat are kind of just are now playing like we expected them to play all playoffs. Jimmy and Bam show up, and then, you get these role players not stepping up. Obviously, like you said, Gabe Vincent was in foul trouble. But, I mean, even going back to the Nuggets, even like Christian Braun, his energy coming off the bench, what was it, Game 1 or it was Game 2, where he was he came in, he was playing, like he had like 3 steals in like the first 2 minutes he was in the game. Something crazy. It was when the Nuggets were in the midst of that 15-point lead right before halftime. But I mean the Nuggets they bounced back in a major way. They obviously showed the colors of their team. Right. They didn't let that loss get them too frustrated, because I mean they were still right there. They only lose by 3 points. They were still right there. So they just came out with that same energy that they know they can play with. And for the Heat, I don't know if it's just a sense of, we got one on the road, so now we just, we have 2 to get one kind of sense for them. But, obviously everybody knows they're outmatched. I don't think that's a secret. But, the reason that we always give the Heat a chance is because of the grit and the grind. And sometimes they just don't have the talent to make up for, what other teams have to offer. So, as far as Game 3 goes, I don't know if anybody was really kind of expecting like a blowout, sort of speak, like this. But I think, the series is still going how most people predicted it would go. Yeah, no,
absolutely. I had them in 6, so I'm hoping Miami can at least get one more before this series really dwindles down. But, it is the NBA Finals, right? And typically all games in the NBA Finals are must-win. But it's Game 4 in Miami. Denver's already won Game 3, right? Is it a must-win for Miami? Because if Denver wins, they would be up 3-1 going back home.
Yeah, I mean, it's most definitely a must-win for Miami, because you don't want to get stuck in a situation like we saw the Boston Celtics in last series where, they drop the first 3 games, and then they come out and win 3 games in a row, and they can't afford to make any mistakes or anything like that. Obviously, they lose a Game 7. If Miami, goes down 3 games to 1, now you're like, okay, we have to win the game. There is no what if we lose this game or what if we drop one more. You have to win 3 straight. So
yeah, I mean, Denver's only lost one postseason game, or one home postseason game, or at least one home game in this postseason is basically what I'm saying here. And for Miami to expect to go down 3-1 and then win 2 games in Mile High, it's very tough in a 3-game stretch. Yeah. But moving over, the TAP Player of the Week. And before we get into the TAP Player of the Week, breaking news here, I looked down on my phone, and the Minnesota Vikings, they cut Dalvin Cook, 4-time Pro Bowler. It's been rumored for weeks, because they re-signed Alexander Mattison this offseason, and it looks like he's going to have a more prominent role this year. There's been questions about where he's going to get traded to, Dalvin Cook, or if he's going to be cut. We finally have the Band-Aid ripped off. Dalvin Cook is now cut. What is the team you would like to see him go to? He's rumored to like Denver or Miami. And do you think he could turn a team season around?
I like the fit of Miami. Miami will give you a little bit more offense, obviously in the backfield. Obviously from what the reports are saying, Tua is more bulked out. He looks a lot better right now than he did last season. He's healthy, and I know that was a major concern for a lot of people. But he helps that offense, especially because they did get they went out and helped their defense. They got Jalen Ramsey, obviously. I think I like the idea of Dalvin Cook going to Miami.
No, absolutely. I mean, Miami's definitely, I think, the spot, but I also wouldn't mind a Buffalo fit. His brother's there, James Cook, and James Cook right now only has Damian Harris to compete with in the backfield. Why not reunionize the brothers there in Buffalo, as I'm sure that's a lifelong dream of theirs, to both play in the same backfield. But that's going to do it. Let's get into the TAP Player of the Week. This is the guy he is the first person to ever win this award 2 times in the 11-week history. Go ahead and give us the news.
Yeah, so surprise, the top player of the week is Nikola Jokic. He's averaging a slight 33, 14, and 9 so far in the finals in this past week. 2-run record. Obviously, he put up 40-plus points in that Game 2 loss. Nikola Jokic, he is a generational player. There is no doubt about it. It was funny. I saw something, I think it was on Twitter, and it was like Nikola Jokic versus Joel Embiid debates now, and it was just basically somebody talking to a stone wall. And I mean,
I feel like it's been like that for 3 years.
Yeah,
for me.
Exactly. But I mean, when you put it in this type of perspective, up until this point, neither of them had really anything to show for their dominance. And I mean, when you look at it now, Nikola Jokic is a playoff performer. We have more than enough evidence to show that Joel Embiid is not that. But Nikola Jokic, so far, he's having a great finals. He capped it off with a 30, 20, 10 triple-double, which you see every day. You definitely see every day. There's nothing special about that whatsoever. I can do that in my sleep. Obviously, I'm kidding about all of that. But, obviously, he's the second player to win it. Part of that is because it is the playoffs. It
right.
is,
the NBA Finals.
Exactly. But, I wouldn't be surprised if he went to next week as well, if there's even a series still going on. But Nikola Jokic is this week's TAP Player of the Week.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do here in the offseason. Maybe we could do who's the biggest winner per week, as Nikola Jokic, after next Thursday, the finals are going to be over, I think, for the most part. It might go to not this Sunday, but next Sunday. Regardless, the series will be over my next Thursday, and we'll get one more TAP Player of the Week until we might have to take a break. But on Tuesday, if you guys watch the show, again, I think we've had 6 straight episodes, 6 straight pods with close to or not, or over 1,000 views. So, I mean, you guys have been killing it. We've been getting a lot of support on the channel. Again, we're on the road to 300 subs. But on Tuesday, we looked at a BR article, and it was basically like your dream scenario for every single team this offseason. What is their number one goal? And if this happens, you're feeling pretty good, right? Now we're going to do the opposite. Now we're going to look at every team's nightmare going into this offseason, whether if it's free agency or the draft. We just want to look at something. We want to look at worst case scenario for every single team and talk about it here. And we're going to start here in the Eastern Conference. This is an article, by the way, by Zach Buckley, a guy who is well known in the sports media world. He's been with BR for years. But for the Atlanta Hawks, he said that their nightmare this offseason is that no major trades materialize, whether if that's with Trae Young or John Collins or Clint Capella. No major trades materialize for them.
Yeah, Atlanta is going to be stuck in that kind of, I think, purgatory type of land. Obviously, their best player is Trae Young. He's a liability on defense. And the way that he's treated coaches over the past years, we'll have to wait and see how this relationship with Quinn Snyder goes. But yeah, on a bright side, you do have Quinn Snyder as your coach now. We could see if he can get you a little bit further. Especially take advantage of DeJounte Murray more this season. But I think you definitely do have to at least try and get rid of. I think John Collins by this point. John Collins has been in trade rumors for like 2 years. It seems like, and
feels like since we were in high school.
Exactly. and whenever you have somebody in trade rumors that long, obviously their interest in playing for your organization it's not going to increase. You get a fresh face in there, somebody who's committed, wants to play their role. I think that helps. So I do understand that fear for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Boston, they lose Grant Williams for nothing. Whatever that is. I mean, he's a good role player. I mean, he plays his role, does his part. But part of the reason why Boston's not here, we could say, is because of Grant Williams.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, Cam Johnson gets a massive offer. We talked about it on Tuesday. Maybe him going to Detroit. But Cam Johnson gets a massive offer that Brooklyn doesn't really want to match. Charlotte, they guessed wrong. They guessed wrong with the number 2 pick. You mentioned it earlier with the reports on who they're rumored to take rather than who we would think they should take. Go ahead and dive into this one.
Yeah. So my big problem with this is that for the Hornets and their franchise, they have missed almost every time they've drafted except for LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is their most recent draft pick that's been a hit. I guess you could go back to Miles Bridges if you really want to, even though he was like the 13th or 14th pick. Guessing wrong here could it could destroy their timeline. I don't know what their timeline is right now, but this could push their timeline back even further. You guess wrong here, you still have no talent around LaMelo. You still don't have an NBA competent roster. Say Brandon Miller is at the best a fringe all-star type of player, right? In theory, that helps a team that has talent already. But say Scoot Henderson is like an all-NBA level threat, basically year in, year out. Say he's like a John Moran is now, and Brandon Miller is like a RJ Barrett. Yeah, I guess that's the best thing I could put forward to that. Obviously, you would want John Morant over RJ Barrett. Off the court issues not included. But this could definitely set their franchise back, and this could be a huge mistake. This is a huge decision that they have to look forward to, because if they don't go out and get any free agents, if they just continue being terrible and they don't draft the right player here, LaMelo's going to want out of Charlotte. Then you're stuck right back at square one. You won't even have a star to build around. So
no, absolutely. I mean, guessing wrong here. I don't even want to say Brandon Miller's guessing wrong, right?
Yeah,
to be completely honest, I have him here as the picture just because we believe they should take Scoot Henderson, especially if they can go out and get a Kristaps like we talked about on Tuesday. But Brandon Miller, I don't think that's necessarily guessing wrong, but what if they get crazy? What if they go out there and draft Cam Whitmore or Jarris Walker or go and trade down and get, and trade down and get one of those guys? This is something you don't need to overthink, right? It's a big decision, but you don't need to overthink it if you're Charlotte. Take best player available, and we both believe that is Scoot Henderson. Chicago, they overcommit to this core. They continue to build with this core that has showed that it can't really work without Alonzo Ball at the helm. On Tuesday, we looked at them getting maybe a Gabe Vincent, or last week, regardless, it was a Gabe Vincent type of guy. I just don't think that pushes the needle, right? No, I think Chicago, maybe run it back one more year just because of their financial situation, and then next year you might be in a better position to blow it up because Chicago is a big basketball market. Cleveland, they failed to find that small forward, that 3 that can really step in and be better than Isaac Okoro. Detroit, their number 5 pick isn't a win-now type of player. I get the idea of this, right, because they are one of those younger teams that are kind of on the brink. They could be a very bad team, but they could also be a playoff team going into next year, especially bringing in a veteran coach like Monty Williams. I guess a veteran coach right at this point. But you have Kate Cunningham, you have Jaden Ivey, you have the number 5 pick, you have Jalen Duran. You have young pieces.
James Wiseman?
We're talking about valuable pieces here. Detroit has the pieces to make a playoff run next year. Maybe James Wiseman can be that 6th man, take a step up as we thought he could be coming out of college, right? But I can see this one, but at the same time, I can't, right? Because it's Detroit. Just take best player available.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Indiana, they pay Buddy Hield way too much, and I want to see what he has, what's slated here for Buddy Hield, because there's no possible way he's going to be making a substantial amount of money where this team is in a bad position financially. Okay, so they don't actually have a money. Zach Buckley doesn't have an exact amount here on this article, but basically because Buddy Hield is 30 years old and they have younger guards in Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, he doesn't want the team to put themselves in a financial hole, pigeonhole themselves when they have to pay these younger guys here in a few years. But Miami, they lose some key depth. Whether if that's Max Strus's offseason or Gabe Vincent, Miami could be losing some of their key depth for what that says here for Miami, as all year we've slandered their bench. Milwaukee, they lose Chris Middleton and or Brook Lopez, as both of those guys are up for free agency. Yeah. Both of those guys can get a decent amount of money. Now, Chris Middleton has a player option. Will he return for the $40 million? I think he should, but who knows? Maybe both those guys get greedy and want to go elsewhere.
Yeah, with this one, this is if both of these guys end up losing, you're definitely in trouble, because Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton are kind of what let Giannis be Giannis on offense. Obviously, they can run a 4-out, 1-in, basically, with Giannis being the end player who can't, he attacks from the perimeter. It's not like this, you're posting Giannis up. Giannis attacks from the perimeter. You're able to space out Brook Lopez, Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, and Chris Middleton. Tell them to be on the perimeter. Look for any kick-out opportunities that Giannis might have. But as far as, you're losing two major pieces to the offense, and it's not like Milwaukee is attracting big free agents. They got Drew Holiday in a trade. Chris Middleton, I believe, was in a trade as well.
From Detroit.
Brook Lopez was in a trade, I believe.
From the Lakers?
Thank you. Yeah, from the Lakers. Yep.
I think it was a free agent. I'll look it up. I think it was a free agent signing.
Yeah, but regardless, you're not attracting a lot of free agents. So. Losing two, basically stars to your franchise, that would, you're setting yourself back a little bit, because now you have to go and try and find guys who want to replace those guys, but also want to come to Milwaukee, which obviously hasn't worked out in the past.
So Brook Lopez, after his stint with the Lakers, which was a terrible stint, he signed a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Bucks, and then he got an extension after that season, which is obviously up after this year. But, I think Milwaukee has a pretty good culture over there in Milwaukee. I don't think these players would leave, to be completely honest. As to me, they still have the best player in the world on their team. But regardless, I think we'll have to see what happens. But it could definitely stir up some rumors if one of those guys leaves. If it's Chris Middleton, I think we're going to start hearing some rumors on if Giannis wants out of Milwaukee. But the Knicks, they give up too early on their young talent. That means they go out there and they trade a haul for Damian Lillard. They trade a haul for Bradley Beal or whoever wants out, right? They give up way too many pieces way too early. That would be a Knicks thing to do.
Is that a negative though? Because just basing off, what do we really think Emmanuel Quickley's ceiling is? Obviously Obi Toppin is
the will.
Obi Toppin, I don't think he'll be better than
PJ
Isaac
Tucker?
Okoro. Obi Toppin, I'm trying to think. Miles McBride barely plays half the time. Guys like what's the center's name?
Isaiah Hartenstein.
No, he was in the
contest. You're talking. Regardless.
I don't know why I just forgot his name like that, even though I was just thinking about him. But
I'll look it up.
Regardless, I don't know if those guys, if the ceiling match, I think honestly, if you're trading a star for those, players, I think you lose the trade. In my opinion, just because ceiling, and then if you're trading a star to the Knicks, who already have Jalen Brunson, and if they're trying to trade Julius Randle for, cap flexibility to sign a free agent or whatever the case may be. I don't think if they trade picks, they're not going to be good picks. They're going to be like late first rounders. So
Jericho Sims was the name you're looking for.
Jericho Sims, yeah.
But to me, honestly, I don't think it is a loss. I do agree with you in the fact that if you can get a Damian Lillard, but I'm just going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to say that the argument's probably that I didn't read the article, but the argument's probably that. If a core of Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson, and let's say they have RJ let's say they give up Julius Randle, right? Give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say those three with some complementary pieces. Does that really put you in a better position than you already are now? Does that push you over the top? I guess that would be the argument. Whereas maybe you wait a couple years and Luka wants out, then you go get Luka, Jalen Brunson, and let these guys develop. But It's so hard with these teams that are filled with young talent because you have to do it at the right time, and it's like you don't want to trade them too early, but because you don't want to get less value than what you could in a year or two. But sometimes you have to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, I know like Shea's supposed to be their next target. That made sense after the Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, obviously, there are still rumors saying that as soon as his contract is up with the Cavs, he's taking the first plane to New York. I mean, if I was to trade those young pieces right now, if I'm the Knicks, I'm going for a player like Brad Beal. Especially if you're keeping Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, you're going to keep Jalen Brunson. But if you're keeping Julius Randle, I'm going out to get Brad Beal, who can play that 2 to 3 spot, even a 1 sometimes. And he is a fringe all-star. We've seen him average 30 points like 3 seasons in a row, so he can do it.
I don't think you have to trade a whole bunch. You obviously don't have to trade. I mean, I think a young piece and 2 firsts would get it done for Brad Beal as long as the money works. But Orlando, they rushed their rebuild. In a similar situation with New York, they go out there and they try and trade for a Pascal Siakam or a veteran, or they try and bring in some vets that really just push this rebuild. Don't let their that would give Paolo Sharon, Franz Wagner probably less minutes going into next year. Orlando, I mean, they're in a good position. Just stay on pace, right? Yeah. Maybe in a year or two we talk about let's make a play-in before we talk about trading for a superstar.
Right.
At least that's my thought. Philadelphia, they mishandled the James Harden free agency. Basically, I'm gonna guess here that they basically let Harden walk for nothing, and they get a bad overall image from James Harden and the media after James Harden walks. Toronto, they botched the coaching hire. They bring in either a veteran head coach or just not the right fit for their players. Maybe a guy who wants to rebuild with their roster, who is kind of set to win now, even though they don't have a superstar. And then Washington, they overspend on this current play-in team. That means they bring back Kristaps on a $100 million deal. They bring back Kuzma on an $80 to $100 million deal. They still are paying Bradley Beal $50 million a year, basically. They're overspending on a team that has, for the last 2 years, not even made the play-in. Or at least I think last year they made it, but they got bounced early. Regardless, that is the Eastern Conference. Any last thoughts before we move over to the West?
No, I mean, a lot of these are definitely justified. A lot of these are definitely nightmares for these teams. So, all of these make sense in some way, for all of these teams.
Move over to the West. As before we get into this first one, I forgot to say this early on, and I forgot to tell you, but on the right side of your screen, we're going to have a panic level. We're live here. We don't know what that number is yet. But I want to ask you for the Brandon Miller situation. Let's say or not Brandon Miller. Let's say that Charlotte botches their draft day, they panic, and they go some crazy direction. What would be the panic level for you if they guess wrong?
Because the market Charlotte is, and because they're a team that's not winning right now, I'd say a 5. I think a 5 is justified because at some as an NBA fan, I'm not obviously my favorite team is the Cavs, but I am an NBA fan. I want to see interesting situations, and seeing Charlotte just be terrible over and over and over again. For me, that would raise my level up to a 5, because then it's like, what are we really doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna move over to the West, where Dallas, their nightmare is giving Luka a reason to leave, whether if that's Kyrie walking for nothing, or they just continue to bring in players that don't really fit around Luka, or they just continue to put a poor team around Luka, like the early Cavs with LeBron James. To me, if this happens again, let's say Kyrie goes to LA, and let's say they lose Christian Wood for nothing, right, and they don't really bring anybody back, and they have to run out there with a lineup of Tim Hardaway, Maxi Kleber, and whoever else they want to throw on the court, I think the panic level is going to be a 10 there in Dallas. Sure, Mark Cuban has a great relationship with Luka. Sure, Mark Cuban could give Luka stakes in all of his companies to keep him there in Dallas. But at the end of the day, in the age of player empowerment, I wouldn't put it past anybody that if they come into next year with a worse roster than this year, with less talent and less depth, it's going to be a panic level of a 10 for me. I think Luka, like I said, in the age of player empowerment, I wouldn't put it past him that after next season he gets frustrated. You already saw this past year. He said multiple times he lost his joy for the game of basketball with how this team was playing and how the team was run from top to bottom. He said he's getting more frustrated by the day. And again, I said it 2 times already. I want to put it past him to request a trade here. after next season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think in some sense, Luka likes Dallas because Dirk, he looked up to Dirk and he wants to kind of live up to that next Dallas superstar. But sometimes it feels like players are bigger than the market they're in. Not to say Dallas is a small market. I think Dallas, especially given the right situation, I think Dallas is a very enjoyable spot for NBA players. But it's like Zion in New Orleans. I think Zion is made for box office. Anthony Edwards in Minnesota. I think Anthony Edwards deserves to be anywhere else other than Minnesota, not Utah, though.
He's going to explode on Team USA.
Yeah,
I think Ant might be the best player this year.
Yeah, and there are certain players that just kind of feels like they're way bigger than their market. Not saying that Luka is in that situation, but I think Luka would, especially if he goes to a New York team, either the Knicks or the Nets, and they have a good team and he's playing good. I think Luka would love that because it is a bigger market. But at the same time, I don't know. He might be more of a laid-back person. He might like his personal life. He might, like it when the season's over, He doesn't have to get slandered, 24/7 because everybody out in Dallas loves him. I think, most people like Dallas. There are those people who I think Luka flops too much, personal opinion. But I still like Luka. I still like the way he plays. But sometimes,
yeah.
Change of scenery wouldn't be the worst idea.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, a package around Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, 82 first-round picks that we don't have.
Give him Darius Garland.
We'll give him keys to the city, right? I'll give him keys to my household. Luka can do whatever he wants if he wants to come to Cleveland.
Yeah, Luka can drive in a new car I just bought. So.
Right. Luka Doncic, Cleveland is always a spot because I don't see Denver giving up on that Jamal Murray and Jokic pick and roll. But Denver, speaking of them, they lose and they don't replace a player like a Bruce Brown this offseason. So they lose him in free agency, and they don't bring back any of those 3-and-D, those gritty, tough, hard work kind of guys to replace Bruce Brown. Golden State, Draymond opts out, and he goes and signs with another team. We talked about that on Tuesday. I don't see him leaving Golden State, if I can talk correctly. But it is a possibility. He could go and join LeBron James. He could go be that 5 next to Anthony Davis and LeBron. But I don't see him leaving. But if he opts out, I guess it kind of is like it's Steph Curry with an aging, older Klay Thompson. The younger players obviously don't have the right mindset going forward. Steve Kerr, they've already told him that next year was his last year as the head coach, which I don't know if you knew that, but I saw a report the other day. They said that next year is his last year as the head coach. They're really making next year the last dance that we thought this year was going to be. So Klay's probably gone after next year because his contract is up. Draymond, if he's gone, if he's not gone this year, he will be next year. So
you think Steph will retire?
And that I think it's more likely that Steph would retire than go and play with a different team.
Yeah,
I think he's already cemented as a top 10 all time.
Yeah, I think it's especially. I'm not sure why they would tell Steve Kerr that it's his last year. I get it, maybe, but I think even then Steve Kerr might. He's had those back issues and everything for years now. I think he might even step away from the game for a little bit.
He better not. He better come to Cleveland.
Yeah, come to Cleveland. Come coach the Cavs, man.
We slandered you for
like
years,
the locker rooms, man. We'll make our locker room the away locker room.
Don't worry. We're gonna tank for Bronny. Bron will come here, and maybe we can get Steph. He's from Cleveland, ultimately.
Yeah, crazy. But, if Steve Kerr's last year is next year, I don't think that there's any way you're asking Steph Curry, like you said, to go play for another team and to play with aging guys like Klay Thompson. I think Steph Curry will retire. It would be a sad day because, it'd be a result of him retiring because the talent around him isn't good enough and they just let his coach go more so than Steph just can't play in the league anymore. So
yeah, I know they're in a tough position. They want to get these younger guys minutes. But I can't imagine a lineup of like the 2019 team where after next season, Klay's probably gone. For the front office, if they're letting Steve Kerr, though, they might as well clean house. So they're letting Klay go. They're letting Draymond go. Steve Kerr go, right? These are the 3 pillars to this dynasty that they've built. I can't imagine Steph running out there like with a 2019 roster and his last couple of seasons are with a subpar team. I think it is more likely he retires, but what a crazy retirement class that may be. Maybe LeBron's gone after next year. Maybe Chris Paul's gone after next year. We'd have Klay, or we'd have Steph.
Klay been retired for a few years now.
Right? But we would have Steph and LeBron in the same class with Chris Paul. That'd be crazy. But Houston, they go straight into mediocrity. Basically, that means that they bring in James Harden. Let's say they don't even bring in a Jaylen Brown, but they get a James Harden. And James Harden, even at his older age, even if he's taken a step or two back, he's still, I think, good enough with this team, with the talent around him. Maybe the younger talent on this current Houston team takes a step up with their top pick. they're going to be a playing team probably. So I think the fear for Houston is you overspend on Harden, you put yourself in a financial hole, you go straight into mediocrity, a current playing team like the Washington Wizards. The LA Clippers, they lose Ty Lue this offseason. To me, if this happens, this is a panic level of an 8. We already have had questions over the last couple of years of, or not questions, but just concerns with Kawhi's health as he tore his ACL in this last year's playoff and it kind of went under wraps, right? They kind of pushed it under as quickly as they could. It got no media coverage, basically. Paul George has had his fair share of injury concerns, and it's going to take a special coach. First off, I'll say, Ty Lue to me is a top 3 coach in the league, right? That he's up there with Spo, and he's up there with Pop, and he's up there with J.B. Bickerstaff, right? But Tyronn Lue, it takes a special coach to continue to deal with players like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, guys who have had their fair share of injuries and need to load manage. If the Clippers lose Ty Lue, I think it's a 100% chance that they're going to blow this thing up.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because Ty Lue, like you said, he is a top 3 coach in the league. You can't ask. Think about it, guys. Ty Lue, what was it, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, Ty Lue took this team who didn't have Paul George or Kawhi play the entire year. Paul George played like the first 13 games and got hurt the rest of the year. Ty Lue took this team and made them and had them have like I think a 40. I want to see like a 42-40 record. Obviously, they lose in the play-in because Paul George gets COVID at the very end. They don't win a game. They don't take a game off the Phoenix Suns if Ty Lue isn't the coach. They don't look competitive versus the Phoenix Suns if Ty Lue isn't the coach. Ty Lue, he is everything that this Clippers roster needs right now. Send him back to Cleveland. I don't know why we fired him, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, like when he was here in Cleveland, it was kind of just like always another coach that LeBron carried to a championship. But after he left Cleveland, I think he really flourished as a coach and really proved to the world that he was a big part of those 2017-2018 runs that we had to the finals. But for the Lakers, Austin Reeves, he gets a massive offer. We talked about it on Tuesday how their line is $100 million. So how lenient is that line? If the Spurs give them $115 million, are the Lakers willing to match that? We're going to have to see. But Memphis, they don't make a big trade. We know Joss. We don't know if he's going to play next season, right? We don't know if he's going to play from day one or the halfway mark or even the entire year. So that's going to be a big question for Memphis. But let's say Ja is out for half the year, right? The NBA wants to get one of their biggest stars back on the court. And
they're saying 30 games, not even half.
It should be half, right? Should be half to set it. Don't continue to believe this. Oh, it was a toy gun on live, as it's happened twice now. I guarantee you, a grown man is not carrying around a toy gun multiple times in a party scenario. But Memphis, they don't make a big trade, so they don't go out there and continue to build as they try to get like a guy like OG Anunoby this offseason or this past season, giving them 3 firsts. So basically, a big trade for that is like just filling that 3 spot.
Yeah.
Minnesota, they mistime a cat trade. So if they were to trade Karl-Anthony Towns this offseason, if they want to fully commit to an Anthony Edwards, whether if that's this offseason or next offseason, their worst nightmare, I guess, in this scenario, they're saying this offseason is trading Karl-Anthony Towns.
What do you think a return for that trade would be?
I don't know. I think Karl-Anthony Towns on paper and on the court is a perfect player around Ant.
Yeah.
Especially because I think even Cat knows now that Ant is the franchise guy. He is the number 1 guy in his team.
Yeah.
And Cat provides he provides the best or a top 3 shooting big of all time, spacing the floor for a guy that loves to attack the rim and just do his own thing. And Anthony Edwards, I don't know, maybe they panic and just try and get a first or 2 for him in return, as they gave a house and a half for Rudy Gobert.
I mean, you should trade Rudy Gobert for about 10 second-round picks, and that'll equal the production you're getting from him on the court. Trading Cat will be the most Timberwolves Minnesota thing to do. If that happens, I don't think there's a way. I don't even know if Ant was signed his rookie extension after that.
Yeah, they need to go out there and they need to get a Doc Rivers.
Yeah,
I think that would be a good coach for Minnesota.
And make him. What was he always in the Clippers? He was a GM.
As
well.
He was
make him the
well.
GM too.
Zion for the Pelicans. He suffers another setback. We know that he's a young, promising player. I mean, his first ever game, he had like 19 points. He was hitting threes when there was questions about his outside shot. He lit the world on fire. 2-time All-Star starter in his 4 years. but he can't stay on the court. He can't stay on the court, and it seems like all these injuries that are minor for the average player for him are keeping him out for basically half of the season at times.
Yeah, this would be I guess if I had to choose a panic level for Zion getting another injury setback or just another significant injury, I'd say a 10 because I think another injury setback or another injury kind of drives the wedge between him and his teammates to an unrepairable place. Obviously, the teammates are already mad at Brandon Ingram because they feel like, he sits through a lot of injuries that he could play through, especially when they need him. He's always sitting out for extended amounts of time, and then he comes back when it's too little too late. Obviously, we know C.J. McCollum played through a torn ligament in his hand. Meanwhile, Brandon Ingram missed like 2-3 months with a toe contusion. And Zion, he got hurt like beginning of January. He didn't play again. And he said it was mental issues that were keeping him out, even though he was fully healthy. I think if Zion does get hurt again, this team will look to trade him. It would do, like I said, unrepairable damage to the chemistry between him and his teammates. There will be, obviously, if it's not already out there, the notion that Zion is injury prone and doesn't want to play will already be out there. I don't think teams would be that interested in getting Zion, especially to be their best player. Because he doesn't have a high motor. It seems like if he's not going to play, right. It would do a lot of negative for Zion's career and the New Orleans Pelicans if he can't stay healthy this upcoming season.
And his pockets.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Zion, off the court? I mean,
he's getting people pregnant off the court.
Right.
Having other people mad.
And he's having special workers getting mad that he's Zion's a special character, and we'll have to see how his career pans out.
Not off to a good start off the court. I'll tell you that.
Or on the court, they can't stay on it. But the Thunder, they get impatient, they rush this rebuild, and maybe along the way they can frustrate Shai Gilgeous along the way, maybe. But I don't know. I guess if you're the Thunder, you have multiple firsts, you have a ton of young talent. It just depends on how impatient Shai is. I would think you have to talk to Shai. If Shai wants to win now, you go out and make a trade for Bradley Beal. Something you don't have to give up a ton of draft capital for, but he can help win now. Or go out there and sign a Kristaps or someone else that can provide instant production.
Yeah, I think for these smaller market teams, they're always too slow to pull the trigger, especially for these stars. I mean, we saw the same situation when Paul George was in Indiana. The Pacers could have went out and traded Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis wanted to go to Indiana to play with Paul George, and they basically told Paul George, "Oh, we don't want to trade for him because what if he doesn't want to play here?" Even though Paul George basically told the front office, "Hey, we can go get this player who he wants to come play with me." We've seen this thing happen with other stars in smaller markets before. Obviously, Shai is definitely a box office talent. If he goes to play in New York it's crazy he played with the Clippers, but if he goes back to LA, he's filling up the box office. This is a box office player. He get more national recognition.
He's gonna have a name brand clothing brand.
Exactly. Shai is one of those players. He's bigger than basketball. It feels like. His play he's fluent. It's smooth. Everything you want in a young star point guard. But yeah, if you make him mad by not going out to get a star that that is very gettable, like you said, if they can get a Brad Beal, if Brad Beal has interest in joining them and they just don't want to do it, then you upset Shai. Other than that, I think Shai seems in it for the long haul with this rebuild. The
Phoenix Suns, they trade DeAndre Ayton for basically nothing. We already know that Chris Paul, he was released. We talked about that earlier. He may not return to this Phoenix Suns team. So you have a voided point guard. You have some depth issues. And then they're saying their nightmare here is because of his attitude, because of his on-court play at times, you trade DeAndre Ayton for nothing because that might be where his value's at. And then Portland. Portland trades Portland, I'll say this, that Dame requested trades, right? So ultimately they would trade Damian Lillard. This might come as a shock, but for me, a panic level would be like a 3. I mean, at this point, you've kind of run your course, right? With Damian Lillard as your best player carrying these poorly built teams, you've kind of run your course, right? Go out there and you have a lot of young talent. You have the number 3 pick where apparently now you're going to get Scoot Henderson, right? So, I mean, especially if you can get Scoot. It's not a big panic for me because you're a team that is not, you don't have the expectations to compete for a title this year, next year, or even the year after that. Go out there and trade Damian Lillard, and this is kind of your last chance to get multiple first-round picks for him, as well as maybe even a young talent along the way. Trade Damian Lillard. You're a rebuilding team anyway. You're going to get multiple assets as well as this number 3 pick where you might get the best player in the class in Scoot Henderson. I think it's a no-brainer for me to eventually just trade Damian Lillard.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Even when we first started talking about Damian Lillard, like way back when, like I think it's about a month ago, we were both under the impression that there was literally no reason to build another roster around Damian Lillard to trade him. It was the best bet, especially because you have a top 3 pick this year. Even if they didn't have a top 3 pick, if it was just top 10, I'd say, you just got to start the rebuild. I mean, Dame's too old. You don't have anything going for your franchise. It's just time. And Dame requesting a trade would all but, open the door for the rebuild to start in Portland.
Yeah, he's been hinting at it too, and he's a player that he's been committed to this franchise, and now he's more open to leaving. Take the opportunity, take the advantage, and who cares if it's not a place that Dame wants to go. Do what's best for the franchise, even though I think I would like him to choose where he wants to go because he's been there for so long. But Damian needs to leave, right? Whether if it's the Cavs, right, as a 6th man, or another place, right? Get Damian Lillard out the door. Start building with your young core, especially if you can get Scoot Henderson.
They know they want Jared Allen and Isaac Okoro. Also, we'll even give him a highly rated second-round pick for Damian Lillard.
What about Isaiah Mobley? I think he has more potential than Evan Mobley, right?
Might, I mean, we wouldn't know because we didn't see him play that much. But that's a joy in sending him to a team.
Obviously, he doesn't want to play in a big market, so come to Cleveland, right? But Sacramento, they lose Harrison Barnes and some other role pieces for nothing. This is a team that had a great year last year, maybe the best year out of any team, even if the Nuggets win a finals. The Sacramento Kings had a great year. They would lose a valuable veteran piece here, but I think it would also open up some more minutes and more opportunity for a guy like Keegan Murray. But who knows? I think they're in a position where they're in LA and they're not necessarily, they don't come with the pressure of a Steph Curry-led team or a LeBron-led team. So I can see a lot of veterans maybe favoring Sacramento. The Utah Jazz, they don't add a building block. They obviously went out this past offseason. They got Colin Sexton. They got Lauri Markkanen and some draft capital along the way. For Donovan Mitchell, obviously, and Rudy Gobert, 6 first-round picks for them, which is still insane. But they don't add a building block, so they don't go out there and get a Kyle Kuzma or another younger piece like that. They can continue to build this core with.
Yeah, with Utah, if they don't, I guess it's not the end of the world if they don't do anything this offseason because they technically still are a rebuilding team. Obviously, Colin Sexton, he was barely on the court this year, it felt like. But Lowry definitely he's a budding star. He was an all-star this year, voted in as an injury reserve.
Kyle Lowry, right?
Lauri Markkanen, I think that's his name. He's Finnish, I believe.
All right.
Yeah, he's from the Finnish army. Actually, believe it or not, he's not even a ball player.
Crazy.
It's not the end of the world if Utah doesn't do anything right now, but if they don't do anything at all, then you're losing. If you're just saying we're going to sit back and wait on our draft picks, then you already don't have the right mindset to go get another star duo.
Yeah, Conley's a free agent too, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe they can go out there and replace a guy like Mike Conley. Or Mike Conley wasn't. He was traded there mid-season from Minnesota. But the last team we have here is the San Antonio Spurs, and the basic premise here is that Victor Wembanyama, we know that he's going to end up at San Antonio. Basically, he has like the Zion effect, where he's unmotivated or he turns out to be a bust. Where would that rank for you as far as like panic level? As this is a guy who could be a generational star.
Yeah, I say at 8 because like you said, this is somebody who people are saying that he's more of a he's a better prospect than LeBron James. And whenever you have that type of hype going into the league, being unmotivated or being a bust is the last thing that needs to happen for your career. Obviously, Wembanyama being unmotivated is not a good sign because then you can't teach him skills that he needs to learn at the next level. He kind of feels like he's had it all figured out. He's not going to be coachable. He's going to have just issues that if he was motivated, he could be a generational player. He could be an all-time great. Obviously, there are people saying that he can be an all-time great right now. In the Spurs situation, they win the draft, they win the Wembanyama sweepstakes. They don't have anything going for their franchise right now. But if this pick turns out to be a bust, this will be a huge, devastating blow to them. Not only them, but I think just the stigma of having an international player get this much hype.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before the podcast, how this reminds us of like the Zion and Ja draft where there's a unicorn. In that case, it was Zion Williamson. And there was also a player that might be the best player in the class in Ja Morant. But if you're at the number 1 pick, you have to take the unicorn, not only for the media attention that you would get if you didn't, or the media hate you would get if you didn't, But, what if you don't take the unicorn and then he does turn out to be LeBron James?
Right.
You have to take Victor Wembanyama. So they're pigeonholed, right? So they won and they kind of lost, right, in this draft lottery. But, there's always a chance he comes in unmotivated, or he's just super injury prone, or he just is a bust, right? He's not as good as it seems overseas.
Yeah.
But that is going to do it for today's show. As we went through on Tuesday, like I said, we talked about the dream scenarios, quote unquote, for all NBA teams going into this offseason. Now we talked about the nightmare scenarios. So we looked at both sides of the spectrum for each and every team. But any last thoughts before we get out of here? It was another great week in the books.
Yeah, it was fun looking at the dreams and nightmares, basically, about Shadow McMill of these teams. We'll have to see how it plays off in the offseason. The offseason is always an interesting time, especially with the talent in the league. Rosters look completely different at the start, in just a couple of months at the start of the next season. So,
absolutely. As again, we're on the road to 300 subs on the channel. We're about 40 or so away. We might even be there right now. I haven't checked. But we're about 40 or so away, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you made it this far, you obviously are putting up with us and our craziness, right? Especially with the Cavs fandom. But that is going to do it for today's show. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. As again, we're on the road to 300 subs. I can't say it enough, but it's another big milestone for the channel, and we can't wait to get there. Until Tuesday, stay happy, stay healthy. We're out.